My son posted online that I was old and clueless about business. He blocked my number, then asked his followers to fund his startup. I didn't comment. I funded someone else. He saw the headline. If you're seeing this, tell me where you're watching from, because I want to remember the places where strangers still believe in a father's side of the story. I woke up to a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing, messages from old friends, employees, and even the church driver. I thought something terrible had happened. In a way, it had. My son had posted about me. He wrote that I was old and clueless about business. He said I was the kind of dinosaur who still thought a handshake could protect an idea. He said he had graduated from my small world and that I was holding him back. He ended with, "Don't call me, Dad. I'm building the future." I read it twice. By the third time, I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to call him and learned I'd been blocked. The little red exclamation mark stared back at me like a door slammed in my face. He had not only mocked me, he had shut me out completely. Then I scrolled further and saw his next post, a video asking his followers to fund his startup. He raised his arms like he was standing on a stage, eyes bright with big promises, voice charged with that fast, breathless energy people use when they want money before questions. In the comments, his friends cheered. "Your dad's time is over," one wrote. "New era," another said. I put the phone down on the table with care, as if it were something fragile or hot. The kitchen was quiet, the light thin and gray. The kettle clicked. I stood there with my hands on the cool edge of the counter, and I remembered another morning, a very different one. That other morning smelled of cinnamon and cheap coffee. My wife, the kind of woman who hummed even when she was tired, put a hand on my back and said, "He's going to need you. Even when he's taller, even when he thinks he knows everything." Our son was 10 and building a cardboard city on the floor. He called me over to see the little paper bridge he had made from the flap of a cereal box. "It holds," he said, setting a toy car on it and grinning. I laughed. He looked at me the way sons look at fathers when they believe their fathers can fix anything. Later, when he turned 12, I taught him how to keep a ledger in an old notebook. Not numbers on a screen. Numbers you wrote by hand and felt in your fingers. He liked the scratch of pencil on paper. He liked the feeling of ruling a line with a plastic ruler and totaling at the bottom. "It's like drawing a fence," he said. "It keeps the sheep where they belong." We both laughed. That was many years and many fences ago. The last years with my wife were quiet and kind. She wore a shawl on cool evenings and sat by the window with a mug. She would say, "Our boy will fly. Make sure he knows where home is." When she left the world, the house became a different kind of silence, one with edges. But I kept her words close, like a folded letter in my pocket. I sat at the kitchen table and read my son's post again. People can say that words don't matter, but they do. They wrap around your throat like vines if you let them. He had written that I was old and clueless, that I couldn't see opportunity. He had written that I had never supported innovation. He said he was tired of waiting for permission. I know the words. I used to say some of them when I was young, when all I had was a public bus pass and a secret, stubborn promise in my chest. But I didn't say them at my father. I was afraid of my father too, but for different reasons. He drank at night and hid from the morning. I turned into a man by deciding not to be him. When my son was born, I drew another secret promise inside myself. I would not let this child feel like he had no one. That's why I took extra shifts. That's why I learned to cook on Sundays. That's why I said yes to school trips and to that science kit he wanted and to the second-hand laptop. That was too expensive for what it could do, but perfect for what it meant. The thing about betrayal is that it always feels personal, even when it's public. A stranger can insult you and it will sting for a day. Your son can insult you and it stings in the bones. I could have responded online. I could have written a careful comment or a strict one. I could have told a short story about respect. I could have reminded him who paid for the boxes he first shipped, who wrote the first introduction email to the first client who said no, who put gas in the car for his first pitch. But I remembered something my wife used to say when the neighbors shouted at each other in the night. "Let the storm break against the rocks, not against your heart." So I did nothing. I did not comment. I made eggs. I ate slowly. I washed the dishes and left them to dry. Then I went to work. At the office, my assistant avoided my eyes the way people do when they think you might cry. I told her to send me the day's agenda, and she did. I went through the meetings with the same flat voice I use when employees try to guess what I'm thinking. The truth is, most of the time I'm thinking about timing, not feelings. When to push, when to hold, when to walk away, when to call back. Business is a river. You don't conquer it. You learn its current and decide when to wade in. On my break, I opened my son's video again. He spoke about disrupting a slow market with a slick app, about building a community outside the gatekeepers, about speed, about vibes, about family who gets in the way. There was a line that I repeated in my head all day. I'm done with old money and old minds. People clapped with emojis. That's how we clap now. Small yellow hands on screens. I left work early and walked by the lake. The water smelled faintly of pine and wet stone. A pair of teenagers took photos of each other laughing. A dog skittered after a stick, legs too long for its body. I sat on a bench and watched the water steady itself after the wind's fingers passed through it. It was getting cool. I pulled my jacket closer and felt the worn shape of the key to the old safe in the inside pocket. Most people don't know I keep a safe. They imagine that because I sign big checks. Everything I have lives behind passwords in the air. Some things should still be metal and heavy and need a key. That evening, I drove home to the quiet house. I made tea the way my wife liked it. Too strong for me, perfect for her, and put it on the small table for no one. Then I went to the study and opened the safe. Inside, I keep papers that look boring until you read them. Old title deeds. A letter my wife wrote before our son went to college, the paper thin at the folds. A small stack of share certificates. A notebook with names I trust and names I do not trust. Some people are both, depending on the day. I also keep a list of young founders I have met over the last years. The hard-working ones who didn't ask for the moon on the first date. The ones who arrived early and listened hard and wrote down the questions they didn't understand so they could ask them later in private. I stared at that list a long time. The house was very still. Somewhere outside, a car door shut and someone laughed. I turned a page and read a name I remembered from last month. Sana. She built a simple but strong service. Not glamorous, no neon, but her numbers were honest. She had looked me in the eyes and said, "I don't want charity, sir. I want a chance. I can measure my promise." I had liked the way she said it. Plain, brave, standing straight as if her own spine were a stake she had hammered into the ground and tied herself to so she wouldn't be blown away by the first big storm. I closed the safe and sat at the desk. I did not write my son a message he wouldn't receive. I wrote an email to Sana. "Come by tomorrow morning," I wrote. "Bring your updated plan." No long speech. No mention of my family. No mention of the post. Just a steady hand offered from across a small table. When I pressed send, I felt a change inside me. Not anger, but something colder and cleaner. The kind of temperature that makes the mind work better. The night passed like a held breath. I slept for 2 hours and woke up at 3. I walked through the house and touched the back of the chair my wife would choose, the one by the window. I stood there and watched a slow hint of dawn turn the sky thinner and then more certain. At 6:30, I made coffee. At 8, I was at the office. At 8:30, Sana walked in carrying a folder with neat tabs. She greeted my assistant with respect. She shook my hand like a person who has done it before and knows what it is for. We sat. She explained her plan calmly. I asked questions. She didn't rush. She didn't puff her chest. She kept her sentences short and clear. When I pressed on a weak point, she admitted it and showed me how she would test it. When I asked about her team, she told the truth. 2 of them are learning, she said. I'll give them 3 months to grow into their roles. If they don't, I'll hire replacements. But I believe they can, and I have a training plan. When she paused, she looked at me not as if I were a magic machine that prints money, but as if I were a man who had seen a river before and could point out where the water ran deep. I asked for 5 minutes. She went to the hall and sat, hands folded, eyes lowered. I looked at the numbers again. They didn't scream. They didn't dance. They stood there, balanced, waiting for a partner. I signed. I'm in, I said when she returned. We'll structure it in 2 tranches. Hit your first milestone in 4 months, and we'll release the second. Her face changed, not with fireworks, but with something steadier, relief, and a strong promise to herself. Thank you, she said. I won't waste this, I nodded. I know, we shook hands. She left with her folder held to her chest, walking quickly but not running. I went back to my desk. I put my pen down on the leather pad the way a person finishes a prayer. Then I picked up my phone and opened the news. The headline landed on the main local business page at noon. Local service startup secures major investment from veteran businessman. They used a photo of me I never liked, the one where I look like a disappointed teacher. They used a photo of her where she looks like she's trying not to smile too wide. The article was fair and brief. It mentioned the size of the investment without giving the exact number. It mentioned the milestones. It mentioned my history of backing balanced businesses and not just shiny ones. It mentioned that I prefer a plan that can survive a bad season. I read it the way you examine a new shoe. I turned it around in my mind, checked the stitching, tapped the sole with a knuckle. It would hold. I didn't think about my son until my assistant came in with her eyes wide and her phone in her hand. Sir, she whispered, your son is trending. People tagged him under the article. I nodded. I figured they would. She stood there a moment, waiting for me to say more. I didn't. Should I get you anything? She asked. No, I said. Thank you, she left. The room was the same size, but it felt as if the air had shifted a little. My son called an hour later from a number my phone did not recognize. I answered because I am his father. The silence at the start told me everything I needed to know about the state of his pride. Then his voice came in, first hot, then unsure, then hot again. Why did you do that? He said. Why would you fund a stranger when your own son is raising? I let the words rest between us. The old me might have rushed to soothe, to explain, to wrap a lesson in soft cloth. The man I was that day spoke in a flat tone that even I barely recognized. You blocked me, I said. You announced you were done with me. I respected your choice. He said my name instead of Dad. He called me by it like we were men in a dispute with no shared past, just stubborn ground under our feet. You humiliated me, he said. People think you don't believe in me. I exhaled slowly, watched my breath in my mind move like a slow stretch of cloud across a cold sky. Belief, I said, is not a comment under a video. It's not a cheer in a crowd. Belief is the quiet work you do before the door opens. He spoke faster. He told me his idea was massive, that he had projections, that the new way was to raise from the audience. He told me I was stuck in old patterns. I asked you to see the future, he said, and you told me to write a plan. That's old world, I let him finish. Then I said what my wife would have said if she were here and far braver than I am. You don't ask a bridge to hold by shouting at it, I said. You build it right. He laughed in a sharp, wounded way. You're funding small dreams, he said. I'm building empires. Empires, I said, are made of cities. Cities are made of streets. Streets are made of stones. You don't get the empire if you despise the stones. There was a long pause. He tried a different angle. That money was supposed to be for me, he said. All my friends know you have it. I don't fund entitlement, I said, and my voice surprised me by how steady it was. I fund readiness. There are moments when a son hears his father not as an enemy or as a gate, but as a human being with a life before the son existed. I could feel him standing near the door of that moment, hand resting on its handle, not yet willing to enter. You think I'm not ready? He asked, but it was softer. I did not say the cruel lines that sat heavy on my tongue like stones. You were ready to mock me. You were ready to cut me off. You were ready to ask strangers for trust that you refused your own father. I did not say them. I stepped around my anger like it was a puddle I did not want to keep on my shoes. I think you're smart, I said. I think you're fast. I think you have a strong gift for words. I think you don't know yet how to listen after you talk. He breathed out like the air had turned thick. So you're punishing me? No, I said. I'm protecting the money and the meaning of it. Another pause. Meaning, he said, and now there was a little contempt again, the kind that is actually fear in a different jacket. Money means time, I said. Money means jobs. Money means the difference between a closed door and an open one for people who are not in your camera frame. You treat it like air. I treat it like bricks. He didn't like that. I could hear his shoulders go rigid over the line. He swung back to the headline. You did it for the optics, he said, to make me look small. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. I did it because she will do what she said she would do. He caught the pronoun. She? He said. Who? I let the question sit. He hated that. He has always hated silence when he doesn't control it. He filled it with guesses. The competitor he despised, the friend he envied, a phantom. It's not about you, I said softly. And that was the sentence that made the ground shift under us. It is hard to be told you are not the center of a universe you built in your head out of lights and noises and claps. I waited, he waited. For a long moment, we were a father and a son separated by more than distance. Holding a rope, neither of us knew how to pull without burning our hands. He tried one last time. You regret not funding me, he said. I closed my eyes and saw my wife at the window, shawl over her shoulders, steam from her mug warming her cheek. I regret many things, I said. I regret teaching you to run before I taught you to stand still. I regret not telling you no when I should have. He flinched at the word even over the phone. But I do not regret backing someone who respects the work, I added. I do not regret choosing bricks over smoke. He said my name again. He tried to summon the power of childhood, the one where Dad could make a bad day better with a joke. He did not say Dad. He said my name like a complaint. I ended the call because I have learned that sometimes love must end the call. Not forever, just for the day. Afterward, I stood by the window and watched afternoon slide down the street like honey. The lake would be bright now, sharp little coins of light scattered on top of it. I thought about the night I taught him to drive. He was 17 and angry at a girl and the world. He drove too fast down the long road by the fields. I told him, in that same flat voice, ease your foot. He didn't. I put my hand lightly on his wrist and said, not today, Ethan. He let the car sigh back to a safer speed. He didn't like me for 10 minutes. Then he liked me again, because liking me had been easy most of his life. Liking me now is harder. A son must leave the easy shore one day. A father must not swim after him. A father must stay where the shore is, keeping a fire alive, hoping the boy will read the smoke as a sign, not a threat. In the days after the headline, his followers made jokes under his old post. Some were cruel. I don't enjoy cruelty. I wanted to correct them. I did not. I focused on the work. Sana called twice with updates I had not asked for and one request I had predicted. We adjusted the hiring plan by a small degree. We sourced a used machine that was boring and perfect. We moved slow in the places where the ground can crack and fast in the places where the ground is a road. I watched her hold her meetings in a small rented room with the blinds half broken, sunlight pushing in like a stubborn guest. I watched her say we when the team did well and I when they made a mistake. Once she came to my office at 7 in the evening with a single-page report. She apologized for being late. I told her, on time is honest. Late with lies is useless, she nodded. I know, she said. I brought the truth. That night, as she spoke, I felt something old and important settle in my chest. The plain pride a mentor feels when the person they backed starts to rise, not by magic, but by step. My son posted less. The one time he posted long again, it was about haters and doubters and people who refuse to see what's coming. He has learned the rhythm of that song. Many young men have. I didn't engage. I learned long ago that a comment can add wood to a fire you don't want. He called again after a week. He sounded tired. I have interest, he said. People are pledging. It's just slow. Slow, I said, is not an enemy. Fast is not a friend. He sighed like a marathon runner who has finally seen the real distance. Can you at least look at my new deck? He asked. The air in my chest hurt for a second. I wanted to lift him straight across the river, to place him where it's safe. I wanted to be the father he can use like a bridge. But bridges break when the person crossing refuses to walk. Send it, I said. I'll read. He sent it. I read. It was beautiful. It was a poem. It had very few numbers that had fingerprints on them. You wrote a speech, I said when I called. You need a plan. He was quiet a long time. I don't know how to write the plan you want, he said. And beneath that, hidden badly, was the small voice from our kitchen table long ago. I don't know how to do it. There it was, the truth. Not anger, fear, not pride, shame. I can teach you, I said. But you have to want to learn. He swallowed. I do, he whispered. and for the first time in many days, the word Dad appeared on his tongue. He didn't say it. He let it sit there, a seed in his mouth, not yet planted. We met on a Tuesday. He arrived in a hoodie that cost too much and eyes that had finally learned how to sleep without applause. I made him tea the way his mother would have. He didn't drink tea. He drank it anyway. I placed an old notebook and a pencil on the table between us. He raised an eyebrow. "I have my laptop," he said. "I know," I said. "This is the warm-up." We worked in silence for 2 hours. We wrote costs and times and deadlines in fat pencil lines. We asked small, hard questions. When he tried to rush to the part where he stands on stage and everyone claps, I touched the page with a fingertip. "Stones first," I said. He nodded. He tried again. At noon, he stretched his hands over his head and looked at the ceiling the way a man looks at a sky he hasn't thanked in a while. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. It was not the whole apology the world imagines. It was not a speech. It was 3 words put in order. "I know," I said. "I'm listening." He put his fingers on the pencil and did not let go. We did not fix a life in that afternoon. We began. Sometimes beginning is the bravest, smallest thing a man can do. You might ask me if I regret funding someone else first. I don't. I would do it again. I'm not a judge. I'm a builder. Builders move the stones they can move today. That day, son, I was ready. I backed her. My son was not ready. I did not feed his hunger to be seen. I fed his chance to learn. A father chooses how to love. Sometimes love is a check. Sometimes love is a quiet table and a pencil. Sometimes love is a no shaped like a door that will open when the boy grows a key inside him. We are still walking. He still posts too much. He still likes the sound of his own ideas. But 2 weeks after our Tuesday, he sent me a spreadsheet that didn't try to charm me. It tried to tell the truth. I texted, "Good." He texted, "Thanks." He didn't add fireworks. He didn't add a mic drop. He let the word stand like a stone in a growing road. At night, I sit by the window with her shawl over the chair back. Sometimes I slip it onto my shoulders for a minute, the way a man might wear a flag when no one is watching. The house is not as empty as before. It has movement now, not loud, but real. A father is not a wallet. He's not a ladder to climb and kick away. He is the person who remembers the bridge you made from a cereal box and keeps that memory alive, not to trap you, but to remind you that even your empires must begin with something small that must hold. When I think of the headline now, I don't feel triumph. I feel steadiness. Headlines pop like flashbulbs. They leave you blinking. Stones stay. If you take anything from what I have told you, take this. Families do not demand respect by screaming for it. They build it by how they move. My son called me old and clueless. Maybe I am older. I am not clueless. I know where the deep water is. I know what a proud man looks like when he is actually afraid. I know what it means to keep a promise to a woman who believed our son would fly and who also believed that when he falls, he will remember the shape of home. Respect is the first investment. Without it, no venture can survive. I didn't comment under his post because I am not a commenter. I am a builder. I did what builders do. I put money where work was. I opened a door where someone waited with patience. And I left another door closed but unlocked for my son, so that when he is ready to turn the handle,
he will find me on the other side, not with a lecture,
but with a ledger and a grin and 2 mugs of tea too strong for me and perfect for the story we will finally write together. Not for the internet, not for applause, but for the long, ordinary future where a man learns to hold what he has, to grow it, and to share it without shouting. If this story found you and you felt something, tell me where you're watching from, because in the quiet of this house, I like to imagine the map of people who still believe in the slow kind of justice. And if it made you think about your own bridges and your own stones, do one small thing today. Write a plan, say a needed sorry, or choose quiet work over loud anger. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.